Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again,
you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobler. Just got to unmute your microphone over there.
already done. Hello.
Oh, you did it just in the nick of time. Talk about just in the nick of time.
Boom.
Beautiful. Beautiful. In the time it took, like literally from when I started saying got to unmute your microphone, the mute logo was on.
I was on my way to it.
There you go.
I keep having these broadcast news pre-shows lately. Where I'm running to the chair.
Well, look, I mean, people complain sometimes, that a certain friend of ours could be late starting the show every once in a while. This is why, it's
exactly
a lot of shit to do, a lot of shit to do. It's nice to have that card to just go to, buy yourself a few extra minutes.
Yeah. But look, it's hard, man. When I'm taking the Jag out for a tune-up,
yeah, right,
and the mechanics trying to jerk me around on the price, I can't always get back.
That's right.
People got to understand that.
Got to understand that. That's doing business. Hey, thanks everybody for being here tonight. We got a great crowd here to start things off. 679 strong in the YouTube chat. Now 716 in the YouTube chat. 504 on the Rumble chat. Great audience in here to start things off. Smash that like button, everybody. Smash that follow button on Rumble. Smash that subscribe button on YouTube. We are going to be joined by our friend Caleb Maupin later in the program in the 9 p.m. hour.
Nobody knows this. He's also got a Jag.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He doesn't talk about it. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We'll be joined by Caleb Maupin in the 9 p.m. hour. That will be exclusively on Rumble. So we are splitting the stream tonight. So YouTubers, be ready to make the switch. Not for a little while. We got some time. We got plenty of stuff to get to between now and then. But just so you know, the final hour or so of the program tonight will be Rumble exclusive. And then obviously our Q&A will be on Rumble as well, seeing as it is Sunday night. All right. Why don't we jump right in?
I have got a hell of an intermission for you tonight.
There you go. Well, it's a mid-show intermission. It's a true intermission because we're doing
that's a rough
lot of
one,
the show
even
over there.
for Rumble.
There you go. All righty. So why don't we jump right in, folks, and get started. You guys may have heard there's a certain rock tour going around, the Bernie Sanders AOC Fight the Oligarchy tour. So Bernie tweets this out on the 21st, which would have been Friday. Today, AOC and I had 34,000 people come out in Denver. It's the largest rally that I have ever had. That's true. Largest turnout ever for Bernie Sanders, and he's not even running for anything. And it tells me that the American people will not allow Trump to move us into oligarchy and authoritarianism. We will fight back. We will win. It also tells us
that the American people will only allow the Democratic Party to move us into oligarchy and authoritarianism.
It also tells us that no other Democrats willing to show their face in public at this moment. And so the people are desperate for something, and so they come out for me. So let's just, I guess, take a look.
Keaton?
Yeah. Feeling the burn. So let's take a look at a couple of these clips, I guess, just to be fair, I suppose. I don't really know why else we would. But here we go. The Denver westward, an estimated 30,000 people showed up for Bernie Sanders' Fighting Oligarchy rally at Civic Center Park.
For president, 2 times you do a lot of rallies. And in fact, we were here some years ago, right here, and we had a great rally. I think we had about 10,000 people out. In the hundreds of rallies that I have done, we have never, ever had a rally as large as this. And Denver, your presence here today is not just significant for Colorado. You are sending a profound message all over the world.
That's right. Yeah, of course. So, Brute America.
Where the fuck do you get the balls?
Yeah, exactly. Brute America, on March 22nd, U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders saw a turnout of over 30,000 people at their Fighting Oligarchy rally in Denver. Now, Brute America did a good job compiling this, but this was, as I understand, the 21st, so they did mix up the date here. But they did compile some highlights from AOC's speech, which, like I said, I mean, I kind of feel weird doing a segment and not playing him. But, you know, if you have to use the bathroom, now would be the time.
He sees the immense pressure that working people are under. But his answer to that pressure is an America that operates on the principle of every man for himself. And we can see this clear as day. He has handed the keys of the federal government to Elon Musk. But the clever thing, I will say, the clever thing of what Donald Trump and what the right tries to do is make working people like you and me feel like we're just one step away from being inside that club. That maybe one day we will be a billionaire too. Any billionaires here? I didn't think so. Yeah.
All right, very good. That's enough of that. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit, starting with a Common Dreams article, which has a couple interesting tidbits. So, Sanders AOC draw biggest crowd of their careers at rally to fight oligarchy in Denver. On the heels of record-breaking attendance at a Fighting Oligarchy event in Tempe, Arizona earlier this week, Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held a rally in Denver, Colorado on Friday evening that drew more than 34,000 people, making it the largest event that Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez have ever held. According to Anna Barr, Sanders' communications director, the senator's largest rally prior to Denver took place in Brooklyn, New York. That was in Prospect Park. I was part of that rally in 2016 when he was running for president. The series of Fighting Oligarchy events have been taking place as some Democrats have gotten an earful at town halls back home where constituents have come out to implore them to do more to counter efforts by the Trump administration. Earlier in the day, Ocasio-Cortez and Sanders also held a rally in Greeley, Colorado, which is represented by Republican Gabe Evans, in the House of Representatives, which drew more than 11,000 people. Semaphore reporter Dave Weigel, who attended both the Greeley and Denver rally, posted online that at the Greeley rally, it wasn't easy to find people in the crowd who had voted for Sanders in the 2020 presidential primary. Weigel also wrote that the Sanders team told him that half of the RSVPs to the rallies were not from the lawmakers' supporter list. Eric Blanc, an assistant professor at the School of Management and Labor Relations at Rutgers, wrote on Blue Sky on Saturday that it is pretty remarkable how AOC and Bernie have become the leaders not just of lefties, but of the Democratic Party's mainstream liberal base. All right, so that says something right away.
Sentence. Only of the Democratic Party's mainstream liberal base. There are no lefties coming out for Bernie. That's why over the summer when I covered the Bowman rally, Hillary backed the Zionist psychopath that was primarying Bowman, and there was nobody there. There was nobody there because the left has long abandoned AOC and Bernie. There were maybe 1,000 people at the entire rally with both of them. Now they're commanding this because the MSNBC libs are showing up.
Well, right. So that's the first point where we should kind of pause here to say this is not so much a revitalization of the Bernie movement so much as it is the liberal base of the Democratic Party really having no other game in town. There's no other road show rolling through town. This reminds me of when I was a teenager, we used to either me and my girlfriend or me and my buddies, we used to just go to a movie once a week just out of habit. And certain weeks there'd be not much playing, but we would just kind of go anyway out of habit. That's like this. Hey, we're desperate for something. And if they're the only ones who are going to show up, then I guess this is what's playing. So this is where we'll go. It's not so much, like I said, the Bernie movement rejuvenated as much as it is that most of the Democratic Party has absolutely nothing to say. And some Democratic voters are anxious that they're not seeing any action at the leadership level. And so if Bernie's the only one hitting the trail, then they'll go. Now, you want to say that that's progress of a kind? Not really, because these people have demonstrated over and over and over again that no matter what they feel about Bernie or his policies, all it takes is for the TV man to say, well, no, that faction of the party is not viable, so you're going to have to vote for Rahm Emanuel or Gavin Newsom because they're the only ones who can win. This is very, very, very soft support. Very soft support. These people are the most susceptible to establishment media propaganda. Now, you want to say third time's a charm? Sorry. No. We've wasted enough time with this. You're not getting any of that energy back. You can't. 2016 was the fool me once phase. 2020 was fool me twice. There is tremendous opportunity cost at this point to getting invested in this again. That's number one. Number two, what the other part that part kind of ignores is the fact that the world is a much different place right now than it was in 2016 and 2020. And so not only is it too late in the sense that a lot of that populist base has either disengaged entirely or branded themselves MAGA, but also the left, the actual left, has been organizing around causes that, frankly, Bernie is not on the right side of. Bernie took way too long to call for a ceasefire. He's still way too friendly to the Israeli state. Notice when he criticizes Israel, he almost always criticizes Netanyahu as if he is the problem and not the Israeli project itself. And obviously on Ukraine, they've been worse than the fucking Republicans on Ukraine. They've been worse than Marjorie Taylor Greene on Ukraine. And that's a major issue as well. So it's too late in many, many different senses, in the sense that the time has passed them by, the bases of the parties have shifted, and they have exposed themselves for really being left in a very nominal sense, in a context of what a privileged Western left can really afford to present itself as without being driven out of Washington entirely.
Well, this is all I will say to, play devil's advocate a little bit. I do think, we talked about this earlier, I do think that in their heart of hearts, they won't admit it. They have too much ego to admit it. They know they fucked up. They know they fucked up. They know
the party brass and the media.
The party brass, the media, the libs. The libs know that they picked the wrong path in 2016. They will never say it. They will never admit it. Deep down, they know that everything, there has to be a long-term memory bank in their brain that's stored all the Bernie people screaming at them that this is what would happen if they backed Hillary Clinton, if they kept with the corporate establishment party. Look, you know how they're admitting it? With their vitriol towards these figures like Schumer, their vitriol towards these figures like Gavin Newsom. Have you ever seen them reject a scumbag like Gavin Newsom. So normally a scumbag like Gavin Newsom would sit there with Charlie Kirk and they'd go, that's really smart. That's really smart. I feel like he's opening up a conversation. And, he's, that gives us an opportunity. That gives us an opening. It gives us an opening. No, everyone was like, fuck you. I think they have finally realized in their heart of hearts, even if they will not admit their own responsibility for this, that the people who have led them here. You can see it, and I sent you that article, man. This is the first time in polling that the Democrats' own party, their own voters, disapprove of them in a majority. Yep. That is why you're seeing these crowds, because there is, and again, these PMCs will never admit this. They know they fucked up, and they're trying to rewind the clock now. They're like, we should have done that. It would have been better than this, so maybe we could do that now.
You're absolutely right that they do know that the 2016 Bernie movement was the canary in the coal mine and the last exit off the road to fascism. They know that, and they know they made a huge mistake by not taking that off-ramp. And maybe a part of them wants to turn back time, but this is where I say, once again, it's simply too late. It is like, I'm sorry, I wish it wasn't too late, but at this point, it simply is. There is no uniting the party around a candidate like this anymore, because too many people who would be inclined to support such a candidate have exited, want nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with it for two reasons, which I outlined. Number one, I thought in 2016, and this was a mistake, I thought the party's bias in 2016 was more a pro-Hillary bias than an anti-Bernie bias, as evidenced by the fact that no one else ran against her. It's not just that, Bernie got screwed. It's everybody else backed out and got out of her way. So there was some reason to believe that at the time. And that's why I backed him very strongly in 2020. And in 2020, we learned, no, it wasn't just a pro-Hillary bias. It was an anti-Bernie bias, because they are against any candidate that centers working class issues.
Right.
And so that led me to a place where, no, we're not doing it again, because there's tremendous opportunity cost to doing it again. Any dime that you could donate to Act Blue should be spent building a militant labor movement that can make a set of demands. And at that point, any politician that wants to come to us and start negotiating with us on our terms, we have that conversation when we get there. We do not make the initial investment back in the Democratic Party. That is an absolute waste of time and resources and money. That's the first reason. The second reason is my politics are not their politics anymore. Bernie Sanders just, voted for basically regime change in Gaza, which is essentially playing into, even though he talks like he, cares about the people there, and I think he cares a little bit more than Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Steve Witkoff. But if you are voting for a regime change resolution in Gaza, what you are in essence doing is giving permission to wipe out Gaza. And on Ukraine, he's been horrid. Absolutely horrible.
Vladimir Putin.
Exactly. So it's not even like my politics are really aligned with his to the point where I could seriously back him if he's that in bed with the war machine at the end of the day, which I'm sorry, if you believe in funding the Ukraine war, then yeah, you are essentially a war pig at that point. And so for those two reasons, it's simply too late.
Right.
I hate to tell you this, Libs. I hate to we know we both have people in our lives who we like very much who were backing Hillary very strongly in 2016 and have since seen the light. I wish I could tell you it's not too late and that this whole country going to hell is not essentially your fault, but I'm sorry it is. And it's too late to do anything about it.
Well, and frankly, this is something else that a lot of people who were in the Bernie movement said at the time. You people are going to come around to our politics
when it's too late.
When you end up being under threat from this system, when you start to see your retirement count evaporate, when you start to see your job security disappear, that's when you're going to turn to the kinds of politics we're telling you should adopt. By then, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. That's what's happening now. You have all these PMCs who are seeing their jobs hanging by a thread. All of a sudden, Bernie sounds pretty good. They were so fucking smug. They were so fucking smug. You remember Joy Reid? Oh, the Bernie people are like the roommate who doesn't pay rent and crashes in your living room. You remember these motherfuckers?
Yep.
You know what? I think 15 an hour might be too much. I think it might be too much. Oh. Yep. They were so smug with that, with their cultural elitism. They were so confident that they had this shit, that they had control of the institutions. And because they had control of the institutions, in the end, they could not be defeated. In the end, they would censor their competition out of existence. They would win the next generation with their cultural propaganda, and that would lead them into this non-economic based neoliberal politics that are their only politics. They really believed that they could, from on high, dictate this empty politics with no class or material perspective, that they could just, by being chic, by being cool, by being the red carpet people, they really seem to believe that by being those people and aligning with those people, they could just impose this empty, meaningless politics on society. And of course, they couldn't. You were never going to get the vast majority of people to turn around and say, yeah, my town is a meth addicted hellhole, but at least I got puberty blockers and tampon dispensers down at the high school. That was never going to happen. You were never going to make people think, you know what, I'm satisfied with that. So inevitably, you didn't offer them anything. They ran to the first person who pretended to care about their problems without even offering any meaningful solutions. And this is all falling apart very quickly. It's unclear that the Democrats will even be able to capitalize on that. Their own voters hate them.
Well, that's why they're running back to Bernie.
This is the worst version of the Democratic Party that has ever existed. Any other moment in history where the Republicans were fucking up this bad, it would be a fait accompli that the midterms are just going to be this bloodbath. That is not clear at all with this crew.
Well, no, and that's why they're running back to Bernie. That's why, as Dave Weigel reported, as cited in that Common Dreams piece, most of these people are not Bernie supporters. A lot of these people probably blamed Bernie for Trump's victory in 2016. And yet here they are. That's how desperate they are. It's too late is the bottom line.
Right.
But we got some more here. So, folks, in case you didn't already know that the Bernie AOC Fight the Oligarchy tour was a big sheepdogging operation, one hint is that the media seems to really like it, including Bill Kristol, of all people, giving it three unironic rounds of applause for Bernie and AOC's record-setting 34,000-person crowd in Denver. ABC also gave it some favorable coverage. ABC sent Jonathan Caro out there to do some reporting amongst the rally crowd and interview Bernie himself, which we'll get to next. But here's a little bit of Jonathan Caro mingling in the crowd.
Bernie is back.
Hey, Mr. Trump, people fought and died to create a democratic society. You're not going to take it away from us.
83-year-old independent Senator Bernie Sanders is drawing crowds even bigger than he did as a presidential candidate.
Feeling the burn?
Yeah. For the past month, Sanders has taken his fight against President Donald Trump on the road. He's billing it the Fighting Oligarchy Tour.
We will not allow America to become an oligarchy.
In Denver, the anti-Trump sentiment was strong.
Oh, I think it's a disaster. And he talks about he has a mandate. He never had a mandate.
But so was the frustration with Democrats. How's the Democratic Party doing challenging this?
They got to be a little tougher.
Quit being a bunch of doormats.
It feels like we're left stranded when everything feels like it's crumbling.
All right, so finally getting some positive press. It took 10 years and a full backslide into overt fascism, but Bernie Sanders finally getting some positive press. And what's he going to do with it? Well, here's what he's going to do with it. So Jonathan Caro gets a sit-down interview with Bernie and asks if AOC might think about joining him in the Senate in reference to the rumors that she is gearing up to primary Chuck Schumer, who is really on the outs with much of the party base. You would think finally, after 10 years of getting nonstop shit and bad press from the mainstream media, now that they're actually encouraging his wing of the party to step up and take on a bigger role, you might think he would react kindly to that. But no. Instead, this is how that goes.
When I first came to the Congress and the House, I helped form the Progressive Caucus. We had 5 people at that time. Now they got close to 100. So you got a whole lot of good people. Alexandra is extraordinary. I am so impressed by her work in Congress and she inspires young people all over the country.
Would you like to see her join in the Senate?
Right now we have, as I said, just a whole lot of people in the Congress. Okay, Jonathan, thanks.
Wait, I got one more. This is important.
No, I asked you.
Okay.
You want to do nonsense? Do nonsense.
No.
I don't want to talk about inside the Beltway stuff. I got 32,000 people.
I was just asking you about AOC because she was out there with you.
Fine, but I don't want to talk about this. What was the last question?
I was just
unbelievable. Okay, so finally, the guy gets some positive press. Finally, he used to sit down for interviews with mainstream media, and they used to ask him, okay, so when you lose, you're going to endorse Hillary, right? When you lose, you're going to endorse Biden, right? The implication being, what the fuck are you doing in the race in the first place, you old socialist Jew bastard? Get out of the way. Now, they're doing the opposite, and he fucking gets up and walks out and says, I don't do nonsense. What?
I got one more. This is important.
No, I asked you.
Okay.
You want to do nonsense? Do nonsense.
No.
I don't want to talk about inside the Beltway stuff. I got 32,000 people.
I was just asking you about AOC because she was out there with you.
Fine, but I don't want to talk about this. What was the last question?
I was just going to ask you one more question about you. I mean, that's all. I was literally your last.
What is your question?
Well, I mean, it's easier to understand.
What a fucking moron.
I mean, I want to ask you about your future. This is the biggest crowd. You said you ran for president twice. This is the biggest crowd you've ever seen. Are we going to see you run again? Or what's your future?
Right now, I am very proud that the people of the state of Vermont sent me back to the Senate with 63% of the vote. Right now, I'm Vermont senator. That's what I do, and I'm very happy to do it. I am 83 years of age, and I'm tired.
All right.
Clearly.
All right. So, yeah, clearly. Okay, so a couple of things here. Number one, I don't necessarily fault you for not endorsing AOC for Senate. I think first of all, the idea of AOC for president in 2028 is complete nonsense, completely a non-starter as a national candidate, obviously. I think AOC for Senate is equally unviable. I don't think she could win a primary in New York State. I don't think she could win a general against a Republican candidate in New York State. I think she has tanked her brand in more ways than one. So you don't have to go all in on that. But when you finally have the corporate media, who has done nothing but smear you for the last 10 years, encourage your wing of the party to take on a bigger role and take it to the old, obsolete leadership class in a confrontational way, if you're serious about leading a Democratic Tea Party, so to speak, that's a word that's been floating around the media a lot these past few days, you would give a better answer than that. You would say, well, there's a lot of very frustrated people in the Democratic base. They feel like our leadership has let us down. And yeah, we don't know who's going to step up, but there is going to have to be a shakeup at the top. And I encourage young people to run for office and start primarying out these old centrist Democrats. Like, you would take that pass and you would run with it down the field. Instead, he has a fucking hissy fit and rage quits the interview. If that doesn't tell you that this is just sheepdogging for the establishment Democratic Party at the end of the day, I don't know what does. How could you react in such a hostile way to that question? It makes no sense unless you're not there to actually reform the Democratic Party. You're there to rally people against the Republican Party. That's what this is about, which means you may as well not be Bernie there. You may as well be Newsom. You may as well be anybody else there.
Yeah, and to that point, what set him off? He doesn't want to take a side against Schumer.
Exactly, yeah.
That for anybody who went through it with Bernie, much of our audience has, not everybody, that's him, man. That's him. He's going to talk all this revolution shit. What we were shown that was a very bitter pill to swallow is a lot of those smug Hillary people, they were right about him. They said there were these articles about how frustrated a lot of the people who worked with him were that he was able to cast himself as this revolutionary, because in the Senate itself, He's just a politician making deals like anyone else. They were very frustrated that he was able to cast himself like this uncompromising idealist when that was not really how he governed. He was like anybody else in the Senate. In the end, he proved them all right. In the end, he bent the knee to Hillary, and that told you all you needed to know. And really, back then, I was watching Jimmy a lot, and Jimmy was really ahead of the pack on saying, "Yeah, fuck this guy." Like most of us were not ready to let that go. I myself, my take at that time was he might be right, but I have to leave it all on the field. Like this basic idea, like, hey, after Goldwater, what did they do? They built up at the local level. They took over school boards, and eventually that led into Reagan. Okay, so I was out there for AOC. I backed that whole project. And I did. I left it all in the field. I saw where it ended. And I would recommend, if we do have anyone who doesn't know better, don't get involved with these people. All they're going to do is talk all this billionaires and millionaires and oligarchs. And then they're going to appear on stage with Pritzker at the next convention to endorse Gavin Newsom or Emanuel or whatever other scumbag they dig up from the Democratic graveyard of corporate goons.
Exactly. And so Chris Smalls here says AOC and Bernie are going to lead people right off the plank into the Democratic ocean party of nothing, just out here talking the same talking points, wasting your time.
That's money. Chris Smalls. That's look at him, man. Good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what it's about. It's about organizing a labor movement outside of the electoral system. And then if that gets big enough and serious enough where it carries enough weight, then let some of these scumbag politicians come to us and we'll talk.
Yeah.
Medicare for all, $25 minimum wage, a fully liberated Palestine, none of this two-state solution nonsense. And you want to come to us with that? We'll talk. Otherwise, we're going to be a thorn in your side all day, every day. That's the only thing that makes sense at this point.
Rachel Zegler as the artistic director of the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, well, that I'm a little flexible on. A little bit.
We're foreshadowing our later piece today.
Yeah, exactly. Foreshadowing our later piece today, indeed. All right. Let's see. Kuznetsky Bassane, thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. Appreciate that very much. Quintessential headline from last month: Bernie Sanders does not address Gaza at Iowa City rally, sparking criticism from attendees. Yep, indeed. Fat, not so fat. Thanks to the $4.99. Fight the oligarchy rally. Did they mention tax the rich or increase the minimum wage, or just a bunch of empty platitudes? I would say even if they did mention that, I mean, look, if they wanted some credibility, they could have been doing rallies like that when Joe Biden was in office. Then they'd have a little credibility. Then it would play as not just rank partisanship. And look, I understand that, Democratic voters and some Democratic politicians feel like we have to do something in this moment. So, like, I mean, like, for the people who go out because it makes them feel like they're doing something, I mean, like, I guess do your thing, but, that's what Democrats are doing. They're going to do what they're going to do. I think we who have been burned in this way have to keep our eye on the prize in terms of what we have to do, and then let these people come to us when they're ready, or not.
Right.
Baby Ethernet, see at the Stop the Genocide March in D.C. set Saturday, April 5th, fellow dissidents. That's right, big march in Washington, April 5th. Answer Coalition, U.S. complicity in genocide will not be ignored. Thank you, Baby Ethernet. Jake is in the booth tonight. Thanks, Jake, for being here and fielding these rumble rants. Dedamod, I fear when Israel exterminates the Palestinians, they will come for the Haredi next. Like the French Revolution, the Zionists is poised to turn on themselves with the same veracity. Killer hitting salutations, dirtbags. Just trademarked Tesla knocked. I like that. So shekels belong to me. Sorry about the dirtbags thing. I like Tesla knocked. That's funny. Okay, we have one more kind of B part of this Bernie rally thing here. Okay, so here is an ultra rare Joe Scarborough win. So he must be really talking to a piece of work when he starts making sense. But here's Stephen Rattner. Stephen Rattner, big private equity guy, Bloomberg advisor, multi-millionaire hundreds of times over, money bundler for the Democratic Party. He helped engineer Barack Obama's rejiggering of the auto industry when he took office. A very, very pro-Wall Street Democrat who, in response to this oligarchy tour talk, comes out and tries to do what every cynical bastard like him will try to do, which is he tries to tie progressive economic policies like Medicare for All to very divisive culture war policies like biological males and women's sports. And actually, Joe Scarborough, of all people, actually sets him a little straight on this. So let's take a look.
Convince people that Trump is bad for them. We have not been able to convince people that Trump is bad for them. I think everything Sanders and AOC are saying is fine, but then you get to the policies. Do we really want to go back to Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, defund the police, women playing men's sports, potentially? Do we really want? That's where I think ultimately we lost, because those people who make less than $50,000 a year couldn't relate to the far left policies. The rhetoric is great about Donald Trump.
Okay, name one Democrat who ran on Medicare for All and lost. Go. Name one. You can't name one. Cannot name one. The cynical conflation of these populist progressive economic policies with the men and women's sports thing. That's exactly the playbook, saying it right out loud. Right.
Well, that's a great example of how once you get into the leadership of both parties, they're the same exact people.
Right.
Like
exactly.
This is exactly what you'd hear from anyone in Trump's cabinet, basically.
Right. Yep.
But then you get to the policies, and Alyssa Slotkin is speaking, I think, more the reality of what we have to do as a party.
At the same time, though, if, by the way you do this is, like, somebody brings up men who transition, and somebody brings that up, and you go, no, I don't.
Can't play women's sports.
I don't support that. Can't do it.
Sorry.
Talk about people border. No, we need to keep our border child. That, and everything they do, you just toss it aside, toss it aside, toss it aside. I know people hate when I talk about when I actually was in politics. I guess you'd rather me talk about when I was a high school football coach. It's not relevant here. You toss that aside and then go, listen, they're going to try to distract you with this stuff, okay? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with us being the party of acceptance. We're not going to be the party of advocacy. We're going to leave that to families. We're going to leave that to friends. We're going to leave that to doctors. We're going to leave that to you all. But we're focused on making sure that the greatest transfer of income in the history of mankind, from middle-class Americans in the 1980s and 90s, over the last 30 or 40 years, to the richest billionaires and multi-corporations on earth, that's what we're focusing on, and we're not going to let them extend tax cuts to the richest billionaires on the face of the earth who are running monopolies that are changing your family's lives, costing your jobs. Look
at the way Mika's looking at him. You know he's getting some later. She's loving this. She's very impressed with her man. Especially since he is a Republican. So, like, I don't know why he's talking this way. Like, he was part of the Gingrich Revolution. But anyway, you get the point. We don't have to why it goes on for a while. What he said there is right. You parse that out. And actually, it's a pretty good, hey, we're fine to be the party of acceptance. We're not going to be the party of advocacy, meaning we're not going to delve into those culture war topics. We're going to focus on this criminal redistribution of wealth from the poor and the middle class up to the rich. We're going to focus on doing that. Now, it's very
well, frankly, I mean, that's kind of Shama's take.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what I mean. Like, MSNBC, this was the network that, once again, would just smear the Bernie movement 24/7 for doing exactly that. They even called Bernie and his supporters racist and sexist and insensitive and unwoke when they did that. And now here they are. But Rattner, when you look at Rattner, in fact, we will let this play because he chimes back in. Let's take a look at this.
Children's brains down. We're not going to let them give them a bigger break. We're going to give you a tax cut so you can afford to pay your rent, so you can afford to send your kids to school, so you can afford to have the dignity that they've taken from you. God, how could Democrats lose with that message?
They need to take back the economic progressive argument. That is winning messaging. They need to lose the cultural war progressivism. It's not part of the conversation right now. Yeah. They need to stick to what the majority of Americans relate to. And right now, it is that Donald Trump and his cronies are getting rich and hijacking the rule of law, and everyone else is suffering.
Okay, but behind those clips, which were great clips, they haven't lost all those things. They still believe in all those things. They're still out there advocating all those things.
That's because you and your donors don't want them to drop those things, because you don't want them to run and win on progressive economic policy. Rattner's net worth disclosed 2009. Hold on, this is very short.
Yeah, go ahead.
The head of the Obama administration's auto task force, former financier Stephen Rattner, was worth at least $188 million when he signed on at the Treasury Department in late February, including a sizable holding in an investment fund operated by the owner of Chrysler. Wow, no corruption there.
That's back in 2009.
It's back in 2009, yeah. Mr. Rattner's net worth falls between $188 million and $608 million. So when rich pricks, yeah, exactly. When rich pricks like this tell you, hey, the public doesn't want to hear about Medicare for all and men and women's sports. You see, he's not a stupid guy. He knows those things are not a package deal. You either take both or none at all. He knows that he has to make them a package deal, not to tank the men and women's sports thing. He doesn't really give a shit about that. He doesn't want Medicare for all because he doesn't want to have to pay for that.
Well, and this is why I'm saying that this could be like he could have a one of these Manosphere podcasts, because that's exactly the false equivalency that is their stock and trade. Yeah.
Yep.
Look at these lefties who want to give away free stuff, and they want men in the women's locker room. And hey, the liberals are as, if not more, responsible for that than anybody. They made that connection. But what people like this, and people who sometimes out of ignorance and sometimes with design, who put those two things together, want is for people who reject the one, which is most people when you're talking about these transports, these kinds of issues. He's right about that. They want you to think that if you're against that, you're also against not dying from cancer and losing your house on the way out. You're against both of those things. You can't just be against one of them. They want to invisibilize there being an anti-woke economic left.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Hypernormie, the DOE doesn't directly create the curriculum. Teachers are notoriously crippled by having to teach to the tests. I can attest the tests are nonsense and could regale with tales of the silly scoring. Okay, so I thought of, I actually did remember the nationally recognized test that I was talking about. It's the Terra Nova. I don't know if that is after your time, Russell, but the Terra Nova test. Those are, I think, elementary school tests that I believe those are national tests. Well, that's
definitely after my time.
Yeah, so I believe those are national tests. And so there are some nationally recognized tests, but there are also, I mean, standardized testing is also a state-by-state thing as well. Like there are state tests as well. In New York, we have a lot of them, quite a few. Rachel Z is a tour de force, not since Sound of Music, is singing about escaping a Nazi sounded so good. I like that. Russell's take on Zach getting blacklisted as a casting director. I like that. Thank you, Biden. Louise Brooks, we can fight the oligarchy, just not Mama Bear, my good friend Joe Biden, or Israel. That's right. It's Vito P. Hey, Vito. Couldn't find many people of color in the crowd. They need the black and Latino votes to win. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that very much. Okay. Oh, we actually can. I forgot about this, but we can actually display some super chats tonight. Because Kuznetsky was saying, Chris Hedges, America has become an internal colony. The corporate coup d'etat has succeeded. Thank you, Kuznetsky was saying. Brandon Guillory, why are they campaigning for electoral change? I thought democracy was dead and there will be no more elections now that Trump won. Good point. Flick off. You guys should get Jason Burmis to expose Conor McGregor. Jason is friends with Kurt Mexican. Jimmy doesn't dare have Jason on. Jason Burmis? Conor McGregor is in the news for what? The immigration thing this week? Didn't he come out for Israel this week? I know Jimmy had that guy on.
Some shit.
He had the Irish guy on who did that comedy sketch on the last show about Israel-Palestine. That was a great sketch. You know.
Right.
Yeah, he had that guy on.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched that clip, though. And I did watch one of the McGregor clips. Muhammad Ali, thanks for the $4.99. Appreciate that. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Howard Lutnick.
Okay. This is the kind of person who's ruling you now. This is Howard Lutnick, our new Commerce Secretary, who, if he has any conflict of interest that he's not involved in as Commerce Secretary, overlapping with his personal business interests, I can't think of one. Real estate, crypto, stocks, bonds. His family business has a finger in every pie. And that is the guy who's telling you now how you should invest in the stock market and which stocks to buy, which may be illegal, actually, but who's going to prosecute in this crew?
Teslas. I mean, this is just so outrageous. You have probably the best entrepreneur, the best technologist, the best leader of any set of companies in America working for America, and you have this sort of weird side of the Democratic Party attacking him. Let me remind you, he's the guy who saved the astronauts, and he's the guy who's going to build the next generation technology. I think if you want to learn something on this show tonight, buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again. When people understand the things he's building, the robots he's building, the technology he's building, people are going to be dreaming of today and Jesse Waters and thinking, gosh, I should have bought Elon Musk's stock. I mean, who wouldn't invest in Elon Musk? You got to be kidding.
All right, so you're calling the bottom. This is it.
Whether today's the bottom or not, I tell you what, Elon Musk is probably the best person to bet on I've ever met. And I think we all know.
Okay, so that's essentially like a CNBC segment where you just have one of these hedge fund scumbags calling which horse to bet on. Problem is, he's the Commerce Secretary, and as we will see, he has serious conflicts of interest with making a call like that. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, you talk about a typhoid Mary of anti-Semitism. I mean, this guy, listening to this guy for 10 seconds, I want to join Martyr Maid's Patreon. How can the stock go any lower? You got to buy. Yeah.
You would look very good in a suit that I have to sell you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so they asked Washington's most successful sugar baby since Mamie Eisenhower what she thought about this, what the official White House position was on this.
The Commerce Secretary yesterday said that Tesla stock is something that Americans should be buying. Is that the stance of the administration, that people should be investing in? Is that something that the Commerce Secretary should be recommending?
I think the Commerce Secretary was reiterating that the president supports an American-made company like Tesla, who produces a very good product for the American people, which was beloved by the American people, particularly Democrats, until Elon Musk decided to vote for Donald Trump. And now we've seen despicable and unacceptable violence taking place across our country at Tesla dealerships against workers, employees, and also innocent Americans who drive these vehicles. It's actually a scary time in our country because of this political violence from the left, and the White House and the president's entire administration condemn it wholeheartedly.
Caroline.
We'll see you guys at 4 o'clock.
Caroline.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Caroline.
To go bake my husband a pie. She looks like she's on the Leave It to Beaver set there.
Look, I am very glad that Honora is helping to normalize sex work so that Caroline can do her job. But okay, so nothing to see there. Now, I just want to pause for a second and point out, we said from day one when the vandalism started that they were going to conflate boycotting and criticizing Tesla with the vandalism and the firebombing. And if you notice, all the brain trust on X and in the comment sections, whenever this subject comes up, and it's very clear, like when you did your Tim Waltz section, I think you actually made a point of saying that you're not, you're not defending those actions, but the right has no problem with boycotts.
Yeah, so Tim Waltz, just because you referenced it, so Tim Waltz was referring to not even boycotting, but just taking some pleasure in the stock
pleasure in the stock.
But notice they link that to The fires, that's the B-roll. Notice the B-roll? He shows Tesla's on fire as if anybody's defending that. No one's defending lighting cars on fire. We think it's extreme to charge people with terrorism for that because they can be disappeared without due process for that. But nobody's defending that action.
Right. Yeah. And vandalism is already against the law. It's already illegal.
It's already against the law. It's not a question.
But it shows you how well this brainwashing works on their target audience, because they just keep repeating as if there is absolutely no distinction between people who criticize Tesla, who celebrate the stock going down, which is a pretty funny thing to take exception to from a crew that was on board with boycotting Target, boycotting the NFL, boycotting Disney. All of a sudden, American companies are sacrosanct and not to be boycotted, not to be criticized. You should never celebrate their stocks going down. So there's that obvious hypocrisy. But if you notice, and if you look at the comments on your Tim Waltz thing, it's really a study in how well this brainwashing works, because you never said anything in that segment. I never said anything supportive of, I don't even think we really talked about the vandalism. It was very clear. We're talking about the company and the stock price and boycotting Teslas and people dumping their Teslas, not buying Teslas. From the beginning, we knew they were going to do this. We said this in several segments. They're going to conflate the two things. And you see people are so programmed at this point to just knee jerk at whatever they tell them to think, that it doesn't matter if you do a segment on Tesla stock prices going down. Look in the comments, man. You're going to see people, it's not right to light a Tesla on fire. Who said it was?
Nobody said it was. Nobody said it was.
So moving along, it's just something I've noticed. All right, so Howard Lutnick, king of Cantor, gets a boss of his own in Donald Trump. So this is back in November. This is before he's even confirmed. And Bloomberg was speculating on how he's going to disentangle all of these conflicts of interest, because Cantor Fitzgerald, this huge investment firm, is his family business. He's run his brokerage like a personal fiefdom. Now Wall Street is watching how Lutnick will untangle his personal interests and navigate conflicts at the Commerce Department. Lutnick has said he'll divest his interests in his two public companies, BGC Group, Inc. and Newmark Group, Inc., but he hasn't said how, beyond that he doesn't plan to sell his stock on the open market. Some associates speculate he might place at least some of his interests into a so-called blind trust. Others say ethics rules will prevent that. But whether Lutnick will indeed let go, and whether he even wants to, is another question. Interviews with nearly 24 current and former employees and associates paint a picture of an executive whose grip on his various businesses is bolted tight. His knot of conflicts is unlikely to loosen easily. Today, his personal fortune, most of it tied up in the privately held Cantor Fitzgerald and its related companies, stretches to at least $2.2 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. A person familiar with his finances says Lutnick, in fact, might be worth nearly twice that. So he's worth somewhere between $2.2 billion and $4.4 billion, this guy. Here's a little breakdown of his assets. So 95 million, I guess that's cash, 250 million in real estate. Cantor Fitzgerald, 308 million, 667 million in Newmark, 873 million in BGC. So this is as of November 26, 2024. So how does he disentangle these conflicts of interest? He turns over Cantor Fitzgerald to his two 20-something sons. Does anyone believe this notoriously controlling, dictatorial CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald took his two 20-something sons and said, yeah, run things. I'm not going to be involved. I'm not in any way going to tell you what to do. You just do what you think is best. So this is how he got around it. This is how he's still in all likelihood, running the company through his sons. And they're not even really trying to hide it, because the very day that he went on the air on Fox and told people to buy Tesla stock as it continues to plunge, same day, Cantor upgrades the rating on Musk's Tesla to a buy. Same day, they upgraded their rating on the stock. 8 months ago, they actually downgraded the stock. I guess that's before they knew Elon was going to fund Trump's campaign. So now they upgraded the stock. Same day their father tells people to go out and buy the stock. And it gets even worse. Cantor holds $840 million in Tesla stock, at least as of December 31st. So here you go. This is December 31st, 2024. Cantor Fitzgerald reported $839,954,893 worth of Tesla stock in their SEC filings. So you've got a commerce secretary who is running an investment firm through his sons. This firm holds almost $840 million worth of Tesla stock. He goes on TV and tells people to buy the stock, and then the company that he is in all likelihood puppeteering through his sons gives it an upgrade the same day. But
yeah, this sounds
all to no avail. All to no avail. Tesla.
Yeah.
Sometimes the arc of the universe does bend towards justice. Not as often as MLK would have it, I think, but sometimes it does. Tesla falls after Commerce Secretary recommends buying the stock. We'll get to the B side, but Keaton.
Well, I was just going to say, this kind of corruption reminds me of someone rings a bell.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Biden Inc.
Very Biden-like arrangement, right? Exert influence in an unofficial capacity through your son, right? Yeah, quite Biden-like.
I suspect
we've really turned a page.
Yeah, I suspect we're going to be getting some very disturbing videos of these kids in 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's robbery in broad daylight. It's corruption in broad daylight, but who's going to do anything? Pam Bondi is the Attorney General. What do you think? She's going to enforce any kinds of ethics rules on Trump's cabinet, and she knows that. Look, I can't blame billionaires and burglars and criminals for being who they are, but when you see people watching these scumbags who literally would not piss on them if they were on fire, taking what they say seriously and feeling like somehow they have some part in their power and their success by parroting their talking points, by conflating a drop in Tesla stock with vandalism against Tesla and just reflexively jerking your knee every time they make that connection, and not looking at the way these people are just robbing the country, are just openly. You could not be much more open than this.
No.
Openly using his official position to enrich himself and his family, blatantly.
And ironically, they would piss on a Tesla if it was on fire.
They would. Well, you know what's funny, and you know part of why this isn't working. This is the irony. Okay, man, you wanted to get all the victims of neoliberalism to vote for you? Okay. You think they can afford Tesla stock, much less a Tesla?
Right,
That's why it didn't help.
Yeah.
People who can afford Tesla stock are not moved by what Howard Lutnick says on
exactly.
Fox.
Yeah.
All right. So, but he wasn't done. He was really on a roll this week. See, this is if there's a ray of hope, it's this. These people are so lacking in self-awareness. The more you put them in front of the public, the more people are going to find out what disgusting, repulsive people they are. Now, this next clip, every now and then you have a moment in public life where you say, yeah, man, I mean, I don't know if I would have rounded up all the Romanovs the way that they did, but I could see it.
Right.
I could see where they were coming from. I mean, they probably looked a lot to them like this guy. So Howard Lutnick opined on how people should react if they don't get their Social Security checks, and it was pretty horrifying.
Describe it to people this way. Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster.
I don't even know what to say.
No, it doesn't dignify a response. It's so crazy.
This motherfucker
Yes.
has $2 to $4 billion.
Yeah.
Like his mother-in-law ever has to want for anything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, really? Really? Your mother-in-law with the billionaire son-in-law wouldn't freak out if she didn't get her Social Security check, which probably would not even cover the price of her bedroom slippers.
Right.
Oh, wow.
She would just wait till next month. She'd say, I'm sure there was a mix-up. I'll wait till next month. But wait till the next part.
Well, that makes her one of the good people.
Yeah.
It makes her one of the good people. He goes on.
Yeah.
Always makes the loudest noise.
Hold on, we have to back it
screaming,
up.
yelling,
We have to get the full thing.
This month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
Wow.
And if all the guys who did PayPal, like Elon knows this by heart, right? Anybody who's been in the payment system and the process system knows the easiest way to find the fraudster is to stop payments and listen.
Yeah.
Because whoever screams is the one stealing.
Yeah.
Because my mother-in-law's not calling. I mean, come on, your mother, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, they trust the government. They trust, okay, maybe it got screwed up. Big deal. They're not going to call and scream at someone.
I mean, it does not dignify a response. It is unbelievable. So now seniors who miss their Social Security checks, who call and complain about it, you're comparing them to PayPal scammers and suggesting that there is no legitimate, like, to call and complain that you miss your Social Security check makes you a suspect, that you're a fraud.
Right. Well, this is what I've been saying. It's what I'm calling Tricky Ivan. It's the Tricky Ivan technique. When you have governments that are not providing for people properly, and they tell, oh, yes, Tricky Ivan, he is getting something he should not be getting. He's very tricky. That is why you have no heat in your house. We must find Tricky Ivan and stop him. This is how we do it. We shut off all the heat in everybody's house.
Right.
The one who calls to complain, that's the tricky one.
Yep.
Incredible. First of all, this doesn't even make any sense on the face of it. As somebody who in my youth was a little bit in the criminal world, if you're the fraudster, you're the person who won't call up.
Right, exactly.
Because you don't want to draw attention to yourself.
Right.
The person who calls up is not worried that if they look into your case, they're going to find out that you're actually collecting money from Bulgaria.
Right.
The person who's going to... Old ladies trust the government? They all trust the government? Why? Didn't you guys campaign on the fact that the government can't be trusted? Isn't your whole administration about the fact that the government is terrible and everything has to be gutted? Now, all of a sudden, the good people, when it's convenient, actually trust institutions and the government, and they should trust them? I thought you're doing everything you're doing because they shouldn't.
Exactly. Well, that is another just stunning part of this, because I posted the 24-second clip, and then a couple people said I was taking it out of context, the clip, right? So I went back and I watched it, and that's why we have this 2-minute version. The context, of course, makes it worse, and somebody comes back to me, well, what all they're saying is that if you miss your Social Security check, that you should just be cool and trust the government. And I replied back. I said, so MAGA is super skeptical and super red-pilled on everything else except when the rich people screw your mother-in-law out of her Social Security check. Then you're supposed to trust the government. Now all of a sudden you trust the government. Trust the government when they're denying you the benefits that you paid into your whole life. But on everything else, God forbid, someone should recommend the measles vaccine, right? No, then you're super red-pilled about that.
No, look, this is what's
it's pathetic, man. These people are so sad. It really is so sad.
That is where I despair, because you look at this and it's just, hey, you look at a lot of the conversations that went on around the invention of television, and there were serious conversations about how potentially it was going to be this great instrument for education, and that's where you got all this educational programming from. There was this very utopian vision of what television could mean. But then there were also people who were saying this could be the greatest force for propaganda ever. Yeah. It feels like with social media, with the internet, it doesn't feel like we really had that conversation. It feels like we went right from, is this a great time or what, to everyone's lost all their critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Like they are so brainwashed and propagandized and conditioned to treat all political information as emotional pornography and or rage bait. It's all about rage bait. It's all about directing people's rage at an object. I mean, if you just look at this whole construction where the good people all of a sudden trust the government.
Oh, they suddenly trust the government.
It's very Orwellian. It's very Orwellian, because you look at the person you had that exchange with. I'm sure, 5 minutes ago, they were screaming about how it's great that they're getting rid of all these people because of how corrupt the government is.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Really amazing.
But someone who's stealing always does. So what happens is we need to get to, so the people who are getting that free money, stealing the money, inappropriately getting the money, have an inside person who's routing the money, they are going to yell and scream. But real America is going to be rewarded, because here's the key.
Benefit of the doubt.
Not one penny should stop going to, we're the richest country on earth.
Yeah.
Here's the way I say it. I said we have a $6.5 trillion budget. We have $4.5 trillion of revenues.
Yeah.
Okay, we lose $2 trillion a year.
Yeah.
We have a $29 trillion GDP, right? Which people don't understand, and which I'll explain a little bit. And we have $36 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
What number didn't I say to a business person? What's our balance sheet worth?
Right.
I say $500 trillion.
Right.
The president says a quadrillion. But at $500 trillion or a quadrillion, 36 trillion, we're rich. We don't have to take one penny from someone who deserves Social Security. Not one penny for someone who deserves Medicaid and Medicare. What we have to do is stop sending money to someone who's not hurt.
Okay. Now, this is really, given the mantra of DOGE, given the mantra of this administration, really given the mantra of Republicans since they passed Social Security in 1935. That is a remarkable thing to say. So why are you shaking the entire federal government upside down right now for loose change?
Right, if we're so rich.
Like, he's essentially saying even the deficit doesn't matter. He's saying, 36 trillion in debt. Our GDP is worth, I can't remember the exact number he said, but it dwarfed that. So he's basically saying we have a great balance sheet. So why are you putting all these people on the breadline? Like, why are you rifling through Social Security and firing people when it's already at a 25-year low in its employees? And partly because of that, it doesn't work very well. It's not very efficient. They pay out, I think it's 1% on administration on the 100% of benefits, which is much lower than any private insurance scheme can do. So
hold on, if I could just make one quick point, because there's a reason I included that in the clip that I tweeted out. When he says there, we're not going to take a penny from people who need it. We can afford to pay the people who need it. This is about rooting out fraud. That's what everybody says. That's the defense that everybody makes. Well, no, they're not going to deny. Yeah, they're not going to deny it to people who need it. Well, no, what they're going to do is redefine who needs it and who doesn't need it.
Exactly.
That's the game.
They're breaking Social Security under the guise of getting rid of fraud that does not really exist on any significant scale. Certainly not on a scale significant to the enormous budget, which he rightly points out we have. Not something that you would notice as more than a rounding error in the federal budget. Not anything that would fix the deficit, that would allow you to cut taxes. Sure, there's fraud. It's infinitesimal.
Exactly.
It's infinitesimal. So, Social Security employees warn of damage from DOGE. This is what he's covering up. And he has to beat his chest about how much they want the people who deserve it to get the money to get away with this.
Right.
To get away with this. So they have all their chuds out there online going, so what if your grandma didn't get her check for 3 months? So what?
Right.
They're, you know, she should trust the process.
Right. Trust the government. What, you don't trust the government? You're not
What,
a
you
real
don't trust
American?
the government? The Trump administration, led by Elon Musk's crew of cost cutters at the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has taken its chainsaw to the agency's operations. The agency has announced plans to cut up to 12% of its workforce at a time its staffing, it's actually, I said 25, it's at a 50-year low. It has also offered early retirement and other incentives, including payments up to $25,000 to the entire staff. Many current and former Social Security officials fear the cuts could create gaping holes in the agency's infrastructure, destabilizing the program, which keeps millions of people out of poverty and large percentages of retirees rely on for the bulk of their income. And here's from Fortune. DOGE's plan, certainly not lefties over there at Fortune, by the way. DOGE's plans for Social Security are backdoor way to cut payments, experts and former official warn. This is the most serious threat I've ever seen to it. Exactly. This is what Lutnick's trying to butter you up for. Laura Holtzel, a former associate commissioner at the Social Security Administration, by the way, footnote, she took the offer, so she very recently resigned, said that the changes would make it more difficult for some Americans to access their benefits while doing little to target actual fraud. She said the changes amounted to de facto Social Security cut, Trump administration's promise not to touch the popular benefit. Quote, it's creating an environment where the very beneficiaries we're trying to serve are simply not going to be able to access the benefits they've paid for, she said. We have always tried to make it easier for claimants, more efficient for claimants. And the justification that's being put forward for why they are pushing this is the idea that there's a great deal of fraud taking place, she said. Well, the math there just doesn't add up, unquote. According to the SSA's Inspector General, only 0.3% of claims are attributable to fraud.
Wow.
Social Security's payment accuracy rate is over 99%, and the agency has several safeguards in place against improper payments, according to the progressive think tank Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Now, if you look at what the impact of Social Security is on poverty and what they are risking by messing with it this way, it's not just elderly people. This also covers disability. Children under 18% in poverty, 15.5% with Social Security, that would go to 16.8. Adults 18 to 64, 10.2 would go to 12.6. 65 and over, 10.1 without Social Security would jump to 37.3% living in poverty. Total all ages, 11.4% live in poverty, which we're the richest country in the world. Maybe Lutnick should get on that. 17.9% would be living in poverty without Social Security. Here's a graphic representation. 10% with Social Security of the elderly live in poverty, and that shouldn't be either in the richest country on earth, as Lutnick points out. But without Social Security, it would get much, much worse. And once again, This is Howard Lutnick's fortune, and insiders say this is probably an underestimate. This is the guy that some people who work hard, work for low pay, work 2 jobs, work 3 jobs. This is the guy that a lot of working people are listening to when he decides to opine about Tesla, decides to tell you about how grandma should just grin and bear it when she doesn't get her Social Security check.
It'll come next month.
This is the guy. Now, honestly, I keep saying there are moments like this. I watch that and I say, yeah, man, I can see, like, actually the Chinese were very merciful. Like, they, compared to the Russians, they would take these people and, you know, I guess they had a secular kind of philosophy of redemption, right? Hey, you know, we don't have to take them out behind the shed. We can put them in the fields for a few years until they get their mind right.
Right, re-education.
And re-educate them and reintegrate them into society. Now, look, if you would not take pleasure deep in your heart seeing Howard Lutnick working a soybean field for 10 years,
yeah, right, exactly.
I'm sorry, you're a peasant. You're a peasant. If there's anybody who should be working a soybean field for 10 years, it's Howard Lutnick.
And then 1 year we don't pay him. We say, hey, relax, you'll get it next year.
You'll get it next year. Why? You don't trust the government?
You don't trust the government? This is the thing. It's so foreign to him that seniors rely on that monthly check.
Right. Yep.
Like if my mother-in-law didn't get her disability check, which is Social Security, same thing once you reach over 65 if you were on disability, she wouldn't be able to make it till the next month. She would need someone to take her in. She would need someone to buy her food. Like, you are on a fixed income. That is what gets you through the month, is that check. And he does not understand that. Come on. I mean, real Americans understand. Sometimes there's a mix-up. You get it next month. I mean, it's as out of touch a thing as I've ever heard any political official say. I've heard people say equally out of touch things. I've never heard anything more out of touch than that.
No.
Hey, wait till next month.
No, the man is a pig. Yeah. And those are the kinds of people that Trump is surrounded with.
Yep.
That is why they are just being allowed to rifle through the federal government and destroy programs that working class people rely on, because they don't care about those people. And even where they think they do, they're so out of touch. They would say something like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, the good people, you know, they're not going to complain. Only the fraudsters would complain.
Yeah.
It's insane. That's insane. That's who Trump's people are. You know why? Because he's a whore. That's who paid him. That's who paid him to dance like a monkey for them. And he's certainly doing what they paid him to do.
100%. Absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick pause here for a word from one of our dissident sponsors. So if you would like to sponsor the show and get the word out about an art project, music, book project, or a small business or anything like that, you can fill out a sponsorship form, dodissidents.com/sponsors, and partner with us to help promote your work and help support the show. We're going to now feature a bard and a guitar. That is the artist's name. Dogmatics is the album. So Dogmatics is a musical retelling of the Jonah fable in a modern day setting. This satire album follows a bard and a guitar tasked by God to help the people of a city whose politics he can't stand, featuring reinterpretations of All the Girls Go Crazy, No Irish Need Apply, and Love Me, I'm a Liberal. You can find it on most music streaming platforms by searching for Dogmatics by a bard and a guitar. So you can find it on Apple Music and platforms like that. But you could also use this nifty link that Jake made for us, dodissidents.com/bard, to take a listen to the album and buy it if you'd like, to help support the dissident arts community that is a bard and a guitar. That's the artist. Dogmatics is the album. For more, go to dodissidents.com/bard. Okay, let's take some more super chats. Here, Baby Ethernet. Joe, meaning Joe Scarborough, was literally kissing Trump's ass 3 months ago. That's right. Joe Scarborough is desperate when he resorts to the truth. That's right. Kuznetsky was saying, great show tonight. I almost again believe we aren't totally effed. All right, well, I wouldn't go that far, Kuznetsky was saying, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. Curious Cosmonaut, thanks for the $5. Stephen Rattner's net worth is only $3 million now. Any idea why? Did he fudge the Google results to protect himself? I don't know. Is that what it said? No, there's another Steve Rattner that I think you looked up because I Googled it too. I think there's Steve Rattner with one T who's not as rich as him, but I believe he is still worth more than $3 million. I could be wrong. Maybe he made some wrong bets. Who knows? But I know he was extremely, extremely wealthy at the time he served under Barack Obama. Michael RCH, guys, have you checked out Gary Stevenson in the UK yet? Gary's Economics, he is pushing the tax the rich message, and it's starting to really blow up. Tax wealth, not work. I have not seen that, but thank you for that. Enjoyable show on the weekend. Thank you, Racecar789. Appreciate that. Generous donation. Thank you very much. Let's see here. What do we got? Artie Blarty Fart Blast. Musk thinks he is Tony Stark while clearly revealing himself as Lex Luthor. That's right. Jason Burmis is also a wealth of information on the front man that is Elon and transhumanism. Thank you, Flick Off. Gareth Richmond, just a heads up, Tesla's up 6% since Friday. Yeah, it did rebound a little bit, but it's still way down.
A little
6
bit,
months
but
ago.
it's,
yeah,
I mean,
it's way down.
It's down.
Yeah.
It's down over 40% on the year.
Yeah.
And it's still down on the week, I think, because it dropped like 15%.
Yeah, it's pretty down. Keaton's reaction to you have to take Minecraft with a grain of salt, priceless. Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate that. Mick Latt, thanks for the 200. I don't know what currency that is, but it's a big donation because it's in red. Thank you. That's very generous. That's good for a cowbell. Appreciate that very much. Thank you very much. Looking forward to your chat with Caleb, another commentator demonetized for wrong speak. That's right. That's right. Thank you for that generous donation. And thank you all for being here tonight. 2,060 strong in the YouTube chat. 787 likes in the YouTube chat. Yes. And for those who filed in late and missed the announcement, we are having special guest Caleb up and on as part of the Rumble exclusive portion of the show. So you can get there by going to dudissidents.com/Rumble. He will be here during the 9 o'clock hour, towards the top of that hour. So we still have some more stuff here on the YouTube side to get to. So we're going to jump into that in just a minute. We'll take a couple of these Rumble rants. Cool Blue. Bernie Sanders declared his presidential candidacy on April 30th, 2015. 10 years ago. Who was still living in the year 2015? Intended as a rhetorical question. Exactly. Yep. Plot twist, Bernie leaves his wife for AOC. I'll tell you, Jane, that spicy Latina makes me feel young again. Thank you, Edward G. Appreciate that. I assign significant blame, says Cool Blue. Thank you, Cool Blue. To people who voted in the 2016 and 2020 and 2024 presidential primaries for Hillary and Biden. Keaton, remember those Biden voters in 2024 New Hampshire? Oh, I remember them. I certainly do remember them. Yes. Thank you, Cool Blue. Appreciate that. Louise Brooks, every time I see Bernie, I feel like I'm seeing an ex-boyfriend who was an abusive gaslighter. There you go.
That was a good way to put it.
Yep. May Jess, thanks for the $10. Russell, every time I see your name, I hear Mike McRae doing David Axelrod. Thou be Lord. There you go. Yes. Yes, that was a good skit. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Nina Kant says Bernie looked ashamed and scared, pathetic old man. He probably is tired. Well, we're sick of his ass too. There you go. Thank you, Nina. Appreciate that. All right, folks. There's a lot of reading in this segment, so I need a sip of water. Okay. Yeah, a lot of reading to do here. All right, folks. So this is a pretty infuriating segment. So we start out with a little bit of video from Damien. High-level sources in the U.S. government confirm every single person on the deportation flights of terrorists sent to El Salvador are criminals. MS-13 or Tren de Aragua. Sarah Carter on exclusive interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News. So here's Sarah Carter guaranteeing us that every deportee to an El Salvadoran prison is a violent gang member.
With more on the mega prisons now housing some more than 100 criminals deported from our country. Fox News contributor Sarah Carter is with us. Sarah, you know these prisons well. Tell us.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to visit the prison, Sakat Maximum Security Prison
in El Salvador last year, Sean, and it was incredible. The cooperation with President Bukele. He allowed me full access to the prison. The terrorism laws in El Salvador, Bukele was able to clean up his nation and remove these nefarious, horrible people off the streets that were holding his citizens prisoner. And I think the cooperation that you're seeing between President Bukele and President Trump is so significant. We cannot solve this problem in the Western Hemisphere without this type of cooperation, which is the reason why you saw President Trump extend such a grateful thank you to President Bukele over the weekend when they used the act to deport these terrorists out of our country, and Bukele was willing to hold them in this secure facility. This facility is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. And I've had the opportunity to visit other areas in the world, other prisons in the world. This is highly organized. These people are detained. They are all tren de Aragua. In fact, Sean, I spoke to several high-level sources this evening who said that everybody that was on that plane was either a tren de Aragua member from Venezuela or MS-13. All of these people are the most notorious gang members that you can imagine that were allowed in our nation under President Biden when he opened the borders and allowed people to come in here without any background checks. This is about protecting the American people. It is about protecting our national security, and it is about protecting the Western Hemisphere. And by the way, for those people that are crying about whether or not these people are given their due process, yes, they came in here illegally. They are being sent back. But what about the due process of the victims? What about Jocelyn Nungare? What about Laken Riley? What about all the other people that have been murdered and slaughtered by these people that have no loyalty to any nation, no loyalty to any person, and would do and have done the most heinous crimes, even to children? We know there are people within that group that are child predators. These are robbers. These are murderers. These are the worst of the worst. So I can tell you this, that El Salvador, I've spoken to officials in El Salvador this weekend. They are willing and ready to work with the United States government again. They're ready to work with President Trump. And I can tell you this, that in the United States right now, we have an administration that is sending a message across the globe. Do not come to the United States. You will be deported. You will be put in a maximum security facility. And we are now working with our partners in the Western Hemisphere to ensure that that is done.
All right, Jesus, that's enough. What, does she have gills, this woman? You ever take a breath? God, shut up. Jesus Christ. You ever hear of finishing a sentence and starting a new sentence? I'm looking for a place to cut her off. I can't find one. God almighty. Anyway, so much of what she says there, absolute nonsense. But if you listen to Fox News, they would have you believe that every one of these deportees are violent criminals and that, hey, why should they get due process when murder victims didn't get due process? Just a ridiculous formulation. But of course, you have to rely on such a ridiculous formulation when the truth is not on your side. And of course, the truth is not on their side. So this was a very high-profile case over the weekend. Venezuelan soccer player deported over tattoo. Attorney speaks out. So Jersey Reyes Barrios, a Venezuelan soccer player and coach, was deported to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act after U.S. officials accused him of gang ties because of a tattoo that looked like a Real Madrid logo, his attorneys says. Barrios legally entered the U.S. in 2024, but was detained at a high-security facility. He showed proof he had no criminal record and was not in a gang, but on March 15th, he was suddenly deported to El Salvador without warning. His attorney says his family has lost all contact with him, and no one knows where he is now. So here he is, that had a tattoo of a crown, and was deported because he was assumed that he was a gang member because of said tattoo. His case is laid out in a little more detail in this article, along with some others. We're finally seeing the evidence, quote unquote, against the migrants deported by Trump. It's unbelievable. After the Trump administration rounded up hundreds of Venezuelan migrants around the country without notice or court hearings and sent them off to a prison in El Salvador, We're finally getting details on who was deported and why. And the more we learn, the more obvious it becomes why the government is so eager to expel these individuals without any semblance of due process. It claims these men are terrorists by virtue of their alleged membership in the Tren de Aragua gang, but evidence of this affiliation is weak to the point of non-existence. Consider Jersey Reyes Barrios, one victim of the deportations, a professional soccer player who had fled Venezuela after protesting against dictator Nicolas Maduro and was living peacefully in the U.S. until the government snatched him up and deported him to El Salvador. Lynette Tobin, Barrios' attorney, submitted a declaration in federal court that detailed the disturbing reasons why her client was targeted by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. After entering the U.S. last year, Barrios was scheduled to have an asylum hearing in April, but on Saturday he was arrested and held at a San Diego detention facility after ICE agents accused him of being a member of Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang that President Donald Trump has been fixated on to fulfill his mass deportation plan. ICE's accusations were based on two things. First, Barrios has a tattoo on his arm of a crown sitting atop a soccer ball that federal immigration authorities allege is proof of gang membership. In reality, Tobin wrote, the tattoo was inspired by the Real Madrid soccer team, which is also circular in shape and features a crown. Second, Barrios posted a photo of himself on social media in which he's gesturing with both hands with his middle fingers down. This, federal agents claimed, was also proof of gang membership, except that Barrios' hand gesture actually means I love you in sign language and is also commonly used as a symbol of rock and roll. This implausible misinterpretation of benign tattoos is a common theme across migrants caught up in this unlawful scheme. Okay, so before we get off of the Barrios case, not only is there no evidence that he is part of this gang, but he is an anti-Maduro dissident, which if there's any group of Latin American migrants who have every reason to believe that they will be granted asylum status and allowed to stay in the United States, it's people like him. We love anti-communist Latin American dissidents. We love anti-Castro Cubans. We love anti-Maduro Venezuelans. So this guy had every reason to believe that he was going to be fine. He had a hearing scheduled in April. And he's rounded up and shipped off basically to hell, which we'll get to in a minute. Do you have anything while we're paused for a minute?
Well, it seems like part of what's happened here, under Giuliani in New York, they always denied it because it's illegal. But it was very clear that the cops had a quota.
Right.
And when you give people a quota, they start, I got a ticket for stepping out of a cab, walking across the sidewalk 3 feet to my front door with a beer. The cop did a U-turn and came back like I was carrying a gun. Right. Because, hey, man, they got their quota and they got to make it. So you take a bunch of not very bright authoritarian border agents and ICE agents and you tell them we got to make numbers. This is what happens. Well, they're going to grab anybody. They're cracking down. I'll probably do a story about it this week. They took a German guy, held him for 2 weeks, put him naked under a cold shower. He had to be hospitalized. They detained a Canadian actress. I am very glad not to be in the tour business right now. Like, why? You think people are going to book vacations here? There are all of these horror stories now about tourists, literally tourists who are being thrown into ICE detention.
Well, speaking of quotas and numbers, I mean, wait till you hear what happens on the El Salvadoran side of this. But that's a little bit later. ICE alleged that another individual known as EV was a member of Tren de Aragua based on his tattoos, which feature anime, flowers, and animals, as well as a crown of thorns. Agents reportedly believe that the crown indicates gang membership. But as his lawyer explained, it is in fact a tribute to his grandmother, whose date of death appears at the base of the crown. Others face similarly baseless accusations. One migrant, known as JABV, has tattoos of a rose, a clock, and a crown with his son's name on it, none of which indicates gang membership. Like many of these men, he has never been arrested, charged, or convicted of a crime in Venezuela or the United States. but ICE agents said that tattoos were proof of Tren de Aragua membership and deported him. Another migrant, LG, has 3 tattoos. One is a rosary, the other is his partner's name, and the third is a rose and a clock. So no crown there at all. None have any connection to a gang, but ICE accused him of gang membership anyway. It made the same claim about Agnello Jose Sarabia because his tattoos of a Bible verse and a rose with money as petals, and about Franco Caraballo because of a tattoo celebrating his daughter. The list goes on, and they link to some legal documents citing further examples. Adding insult to injury, many of these migrants came to the U.S. seeking refugee from Tren de Aragua, only to then be accused of membership in that very gang. One person whose name was redacted had applied for asylum 6 months before being unlawfully deported this month due to my fear of harm and mistreatment from multiple criminal groups, including the Tren de Aragua gang. According to his attorney's declaration, immigration agents detained him while he was living in a New York homeless shelter with his family. The government's theory appears to be that any Venezuelan migrant with tattoos is presumptively a member of Tren de Aragua until proven otherwise, except that they cannot prove otherwise since they have been denied due process. Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, precisely because he claims it allows him to expel non-citizens without the annoyance of judicial oversight. Here's another example that was just posted to X. This is up to 1.3 million views. Tim Miller posts, "You are telling me this man is Tren de Aragua. He was so dangerous we had to send him to a foreign prison camp to be beaten with no due process? Do you have any soul left, Marco Rubio?" He's referring to this.
He never had one.
Yeah. This is the story that he's linking to. Gay Venezuelan asylum seeker disappeared to Salvadoran mega prison under Trump order. This is a Rachel Maddow segment. For some reason, I can't find the video online anywhere. Otherwise, I would show it to you. I don't know why it's not there, but that was reported on in The Advocate. I know Crystal and Sagar debated this, and Sagar was like, what difference does it make that he's gay? What difference does it make that he's gay? Which obviously, I mean, I don't want to get into really upsetting detail, but it's not a safe place for most people. It's certainly not a safe place for gay people. Glenn Greenwald, all available evidence strongly suggests that at least one of the Venezuelans shipped to a monstrous prison in El Salvador for life has nothing to do with Tren de Aragua, though the refusal to allow hearings means all cases are uncertain. So he quote tweets that. And this is just one of many. The Slate article outlined many more, including the soccer player.
And he was here legally.
And he was here legally. He was allowed in. So here is from Cosachin News. This mother said her son believed that he was being deported to Venezuela, but they took him to El Salvador's CICOT, which is the name of the prison. Venezuelans marched on Monday to condemn the inhumane measures taken by the U.S. and El Salvador against migrants. So this is another detail that's kind of hidden in plain sight here that some people miss the first time. In fact, it didn't really register to me how problematic this was. But yeah, most of the people being sent to El Salvador are not El Salvadoran. So it's not like that country has any jurisdiction over them. This may as well be a Guantanamo Bay. We're just using this as like a third party kind of black site. These are Venezuelans being shipped off to El Salvador, a country that has no real natural jurisdiction over them. So here's the mother of someone who's gotten mixed up in all of this.
Jesús Gabriel Ross Ortega.
¿Y cuándo fue la última vez que supo de él? ¿Cuándo se comunicó él? ¿Dónde estaba?
La semana pasada fue que tuve comunicación con él el día jueves, donde nos dijo que lo habían deportado y que el vuelo salía para Venezuela de sábado para domingo. Vuelo que nunca llegó porque eso fue lo que le hicieron creer allá, que venían deportados a Venezuela, pero fue mentira. O sea, la deportación era para El Salvador. Violaron todos sus derechos. De hecho, él tenía su corte el día de hoy y no respetaron ni siquiera eso. Cuando él ya tenía una fecha de corte que fue el día de hoy. Y mi hijo no es delincuente, mi hijo no pertenece a ninguna banda delictiva. Mi hijo es un muchacho que que él lo que busca es emprender. Él se fue buscando un sueño, como todo muchacho joven. Pero todo esto se volvió fue una pesadilla. Pesadilla para él y pesadilla para nosotros, su familia, que lo extrañamos muchísimo porque él es buen hijo, es buen hermano, es buen amigo. Mira, mi hijo es excelente ser humano. Y el que tenga 2 tatuajes, eso no define una persona. No lo define y no me parece justo. No me parece justo.
Es un plan
de verdad
por la derecha
necesito de
junto a los intereses
de la ayuda, que me traigan a mí,
el broche de oro se lo
que
pone
lo traigan
porque
porque
el gran negocio.
En esa cárcel corre mucho riesgo y pido por él y por todos los migrantes, no solamente por mí, por todos los migrantes que los regresen a Venezuela, que los regresen.
Por eso es que él está feliz.
And at this point, Venezuela is willing to take them back. So there's just absolutely no point in doing this, except there is certainly an incentive on the part of Nayib Bukele and the El Salvadoran government. But she mentioned the fate that her son is having to suffer in this prison. So now we're going to take a look at Sikot Prison. Here are some shots from inside this jail, some photos of what conditions are like in here. 40,000 prisoner capacity here. This is incarceration on an industrial scale, quite literally an industrial scale, as we'll learn in a little bit. Here's another shot. Here's another shot. Here they are. This is in April 2020. So they were being very COVID safe by masking all of these people, making them literally lean on each other, packed hundreds to a room. That's where people are. People who came legally, who are not gang members, who are awaiting asylum hearings. They are now living in hell. The Conversation publishes this piece. Beating, overcrowding. I'm hearing a little echo. Can you lower your monitor a little bit? Maybe it's mine. I'm going to lower my monitor just a tad. Thank you. Appreciate that. Perfect. All right. Beatings, overcrowding, and food deprivation. U.S. deportees face distressing human rights conditions in El Salvador's mega prison. Nayib Bukele has led El Salvador since 2019, winning the presidency by vowing to crack down on the crime and corruption that had plagued the nation. But he has also circumvented democratic norms, for example, by rewriting the Constitution so that he could be reelected in 2024. For the past 3 years, Bukele has governed with few checks and balances under a self-imposed state of exception. This emergency status has allowed Bukele to suspend many rights as he wages what he calls a war on gangs. The crackdown manifests in mass arbitrary arrests of anyone who fits stereotypical demographic characteristics of gang members, like having tattoos, a prior criminal record, or even just looking nervous. Wow, bad time to open a tattoo parlor in Venezuela or El Salvador, or Miami for that matter. As a result of the ongoing mass arrests, El Salvador now has the highest incarceration rate in the world. That's right. They even surpassed the United States. The proportion of its population that El Salvador incarcerates is more than triple that of the U.S. and double that of the next nearest country, Cuba. Bukele's tough-on-gangs persona has earned him widespread popularity at home and abroad. He has fostered an immediate friendship with the new U.S. administration in particular. But maintaining this popularity has involved, it is widely alleged, manipulating crime statistics, attacking journalists who criticize him, and denying involvement in a widely documented secret gang pact that unraveled just before the start of the state of exception. That's right. He cut a deal with MS-13 to keep the murder rate down so that it would look like his policies were working. Bukele and pro-government Salvadoran media insist that the crackdown on gangs has transformed El Salvador into the safest country in Latin America. But on the ground, Salvadorans have described how police, military personnel, and Mexican cartels have taken over the exploitative practices previously carried out by gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18. One Salvadoran woman whose son died in prison just a few days after he was arbitrarily detained told a reporter from Al Jazeera, "One is always afraid. Before it was fear of the gangs. Now it's also the security forces who take innocent people. Bukele's crackdown on gangs has come at a huge cost to human rights, and nowhere is this seen more than in El Salvador's prison system. Bukele has ordered a communication blackout between incarcerated people and their loved ones. This means no visits, no letters, and no phone calls. Such lack of contact makes it nearly impossible for people to determine the well-being of their incarcerated family members, many of whom are parents with young children now cared for by extended family. Despite the blackout, scholars, international and national rights groups, and investigative journalists have been able to build up a picture of conditions inside El Salvador's prisons through interviews with victims and their family members, medical records, and forensic analysis of cases of prison deaths. What they describe is a hellscape. Incarcerated Salvadorans are packed into grossly overcrowded cells, beaten regularly by prison personnel, and denied medicines even when they are available. Inmates are frequently subjected to punishments including food deprivation and electric shocks. Indeed, a U.S. State Department's 2023 country report on El Salvador noted the harsh and life-threatening prison conditions. The human rights organization Cristosal estimates that hundreds have died from malnutrition, blunt force trauma, strangulation, and lack of life-saving medical treatment. Often, their bodies are buried by government workers in mass graves without notifying families. That's why people go in, they disappear. There's never reports that they died. They never come out. People are left wondering.
Right.
Although,
That's why they're not allowing them contact with the family, so they won't know anything.
Yep, exactly. Although El Salvador is a signatory to the United Nations Convention Against Torture, Amnesty International concluded after multiple missions to the country and interviews with the victims and their families that there is systemic use of torture in Salvadoran prisons. Although El Salvador, that one is, sorry, just copied that paragraph. Likewise, a case-by-case study by Cristosal, which included forensic analysis of exhumed bodies of people who died in prison, determined in 2024 that torture has become a state policy. So we could see, obviously, just the absolute horror that so many totally innocent people are having to live through now, because they had a tattoo that Tom raised in a metal box Homan and his gang of goons thought looks like a gang tattoo, right? But now, this is an interesting piece. This is published by a conservative outlet, the American Conservative. So what's in it for Nayib Bukele to take all of these dangerous gang members into his industrial prison farm? Bukele makes prison pay. The president of El Salvador hopes to make hay with an unusual business proposition. This is not published in the Daily Worker. This is published in the American Conservative. Let's take a look at this. This is short. El Salvador's offer to open its prison system to American inmates is an unusual one. Generally, criminals are not an import of choice. Bukele, however, is an enterprising businessman as well as a capable politician, and he sees his country's prison system as an asset that can be profitably leveraged. The deal runs thus. The U.S. deports criminal illegal aliens to be incarcerated in El Salvador's Terrorism Containment Center megaprison, also known as CCOT. In this case, gang members from El Salvador's own MS-13, as well as those from dangerous Venezuelan group Tren de Aragua. In return, the U.S. government pays El Salvador $20,000 a year per inmate to house, feed, and most importantly, guard them. This is about half the cost that would be expended were the inmates enrolled in the federal system of penitentiaries here in the U.S., a massive savings for the U.S. government. At the same time, with a GDP per capita of less than $6,000, this far exceeds the cost per prisoner expended by El Salvador's prison system, allowing Bukele to turn a tidy profit off the operation. So, this may sound extreme, and I don't mean this, on YouTube. We have to be careful how we say this because there are certain contexts that you have to provide. I'm not accusing any specific person of a specific illicit act, but what we just described there is human trafficking. That's what this is. This is for-profit human trafficking. It is sweeping up people, shipping them across borders in bondage for profit. That's what this is. This is a human trafficking operation. He's doing this for money. It enriches his country to take in criminals. He gets paid far more per year to house them than it costs him to care for them, quote unquote. Not only do they not care for them, it sounds like they straight up fucking torture them. And so that's what's happening right now to people who have come to the country legally. Even if they came to the country illegally, they don't deserve this. Even if they are violent gang members, they should be afforded a day in court so that we can prove that they're violent gang members. And I would say that gang members from Venezuela, if you're gonna deport them, you deport them to Venezuela, to their country where their government has jurisdiction over them. This is absolutely fucking barbaric and insane. And I've seen people respond to this, just absolute pathetic people. I have no sympathy. Okay, if you have no sympathy for a soccer player who was mistaken for a gang member to be shipped off to this for-profit torture facility, you are just a broken person. Either some traumatic event in your past has broken you, or you've been worn down over a number of years to the point where you have no faith that your life is going to improve and you just take out your misery on more vulnerable people. But anybody who is okay with this is just a broken person. It's such a despicable story.
Yeah, this is where I'm going to have to take a page from your book. This is a very strong argument that America needs to collapse because we are committing such horrific crimes against people around the world. And now you have an administration that really, and hey, we were among those saying, well, to say fascism, that's an exaggeration. They're going to do away with democracy. But as this particular administration started to take shape, the first administration, I think that was hyperbolic. This administration, this is straight up. They're trying to establish an authoritarian dictatorship. Yeah, man. I mean, you'll still have the trappings of democracy, just like Rome kept a Senate after Caesar had essentially neutralized all power other than the emperor. They still did their bureaucratic, small ball kind of voting. They were able to manage little things in the empire. But they had no real power. The emperor could execute them at any time. You'll still have your Senate. You'll still have your Congress. But an executive that wields the kind of power that they're attempting to wield is a dictator. It's a modern version of a monarch. That is what they want. That is the Curtis Yarvin playbook. You go look at the Curtis Yarvin theory of government. You tell me it does not match exactly the moves that they're making. This is why running around and screaming about how judges need to be dragged out of their houses is very, very dangerous. They are trying to take a population that's mostly ignorant of the Constitution and checks and balances and the basic premise of the country, and convince them that the judges are not allowed to do this. This is exactly what they're supposed to do. What the judge is doing, trying to hold this administration accountable and get some justice for these people who have been illegally deported to a third-party country that they're not even from, in a prison that violates just basic standards of human rights. All of that aside, a prison like that should not exist. The people who run it should be held accountable according to the international law that El Salvador itself is a signatory to.
Right.
This is what judges are, your only real line of defense against a completely out of control executive branch like this, that regardless of the facts, regardless of the truth, in order to satisfy a base that is largely made up of what you describe, people who are so broken and dispirited that the only pleasure they can imagine getting is through somebody else's suffering. They know how to please that audience. Yeah, you see that guy? He had a tattoo. We're sending him to the worst place on earth. Yeah, you're right. If you get satisfaction from that, you're a broken person. Unfortunately, Trump, this administration, is the result of at least one, possibly two, maybe three generations that are broken, that have become increasingly dispirited and incapable of thinking critically. That's how you get this. A guy like Donald Trump had run for president in 1965. People would have laughed at him.
Right.
People laughed. He makes George Wallace look serious. What? Like, nobody would have even considered taking a guy like that seriously as a candidate for president. That is a result of decades of destroying people's communities, destroying people's futures, destroying people's dreams. And now they're just, all they have left is rage. And, Trump feeds that. But when you look at this, when you look at the just absolute evil that we're responsible for, from this to Gaza, yeah, I mean, where's the downside? There's a downside for us because we live here. But if you look at the global picture, where's the downside to the American economy collapsing to the point that it can't afford to do things like this? I don't really see one from a global perspective.
All right. Well, I guess my work here is done.
You sold me. Rachel Zegler too. You're putting wins on the board tonight.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Even the critical drinker came around on Zegler.
That's right. Putting wins on the board. All right. Mark Pugliese, thanks for the $10. Boys, we're in black comedy. Send up with a rise to fascism story. In our case, the public hated the liberals so much they begged Hitler to come to power. Brett Yoendo, thanks for the $5. I'm watching while in a massage chair. Hits a little different than usual. Things get any worse. I suggest broadcasting live from massage chairs. There we go. All right. Excellent. All right. Caleb is here. Should we switch to Rumble? And then we'll do the rest of the show after Caleb's interview? I think we should probably do that.
I think we should do Snow White on this side.
All right. We'll do one more. All right. One more, and then we'll bring Caleb in.
All right. Okay.
This is a short one. Sorry, Caleb.
Yeah, we have been down a long road with Snow White. This is probably the last time we'll ever cover this. So we want to have a little fun with it. We've done no less than 3 segments about Snow White, usually with me and Keaton at odds on the subject of one Miss Rachel Zegler. So let's look at a little excerpt of our very first tete-a-tete on this.
Girl, I like this Rachel Zegler. I know she's getting a lot of hate. I like it. She's a bubbly young woman who's clearly having the time of her life doing inverse promotion of a film that she probably got paid very well to be in. She's a kid. I don't know. Does she not realize, like, hey, you're actually talking you're actually running the film into the ground.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time. Cast a guy in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know where you're coming from, Kat.
All of Andrew's scenes could get cut.
She could not be more cringe.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours.
I don't think she's cringe. I think it's
you represent like 0.02% of people in
I was
America
scared of the
who do not think that was
I watched
cringe.
it once and then I
like her.
picked it up again.
So then we had to do another segment because there was a big flare-up between her and Gal Gadot for obvious reasons. So Rachel Zegler tweeted out, "It will always be free Palestine." Recently, Gal Gadot, who served in the IDF, by the way, got an award from the ADL. This was just a couple weeks ago, and gave a 12-minute speech about how proud she is to be a Jew, doing what Zionists tend to do, making that synonymous with Zionism and making anti-Zionism synonymous with anti-Semitism. So presumably there's a lot of tension backstage. There's somebody tweeted out, Gal Gadot is no Wonder Woman. She was a member of the IDF, an agent of apartheid and ethnic cleansing. Never forget that. Never. I shared this meme as the movie was approaching. So Disney was facing a boycott on both ends. They were facing a boycott because Zegler's pro-Palestine and also for other things she said, trashing the original film. And they're facing a boycott from pro-Palestine people. This movie was getting it from all directions. Now, Keaton was very impressed by her labor stance during the actor strikes.
That's right.
Here she is speaking for labor in Hollywood.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
That's right. It's a labor issue. For pro-work, we got to be pro-worker across the board. You know, Shama and I both wanted her for Workers Strike Back. It was just, a scheduling thing.
There was a scheduling thing. She was going to come.
Yeah.
She was going to
Exactly.
come,
She should be
actually.
there.
She's seen our coverage. She liked it.
Yeah.
So finally, this movie about which there has been so much Sturm und Drang, so much drama leading up to it. Finally, this movie has opened. How's it doing? Oh, first, before that, jumping myself. Disney had to scale back the Snow White Hollywood premiere, and they canceled the London premiere entirely, fearing what kinds of questions they might get asked. They pretty much muzzled Zegler. I don't know that they had to worry what answer she would give. I think they were worried how reporters were going to bait them if they did a normal premiere where they can just ask questions. So, do you still feel that the original is horrible? Like they just didn't want to risk having a moment like that. So they did a very scaled down premiere where it was only critics and reviewers that are very friendly to Disney. And of course they did their job. They all came out talking about how wonderful the movie was. They appeared together at the Academy Awards, and a lot of people observed no love lost there. They never made eye contact the entire time they walked out and exited. They did the gig and they left. So finally opened on Friday. 44% from the critics, 74% from the audience. Although strangely, that's typical of these Disney live action remakes, that the critic scores are lower than the audience scores. But on both sides, this is lower than would be normal. Like usually they're fresh with the critics. Snow White box office results land. Take that down.
Oh, sorry.
Snow White box office results land after devastating reviews. The Disney live action remake, which stars Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, took $16 million across Friday and preview screenings from 4,200 venues across the U.S. Variety reports that this figure puts the film on track to land a projected opening weekend north of $45 million. Last I heard, it's actually like 43.5. Snow White has a steep climb ahead. It carries a production cost of more than $250 million, meaning it will have to have a successful theatrical run to reach profitability. By the way, they reshot a lot of this movie. It probably cost a lot more than that. By comparison, 2023's The Little Mermaid, which had a similar budget of $240 million, made $95 million on its opening weekend, more than double what Snow White is projected to make. Now, I got to say, Critical Drinker is very talented. I don't think he has a lot to worry about. But I think for a lot of people, the anti-woke Disney teat is about to run dry. Like Snow White is kind of the party at the end of the universe for these guys, I think. There's not a lot more content like that coming out. And boy, are they milking it. Everybody's doing a review of this. Candace is doing a review of this. Everybody is getting in on this action, including us. But I am not going to subject myself to that movie. But, hey, man, Keaton is vindicated. Keaton is vindicated in the end. Here's what Critical Drinker had to say about the much despised in his corner of the internet, Rachel Zegler.
A lot I want to say about this movie, but first, let us begin with the positives. And as hard as it might be to believe, most of them actually concern Rachel Zegler.
No way!
Now don't get me wrong, she might be an obnoxious arsehole in the real world, but credit where credit's due here, she actually isn't terrible as Snow White.
It's not true! That's impossible!
I mean, her outfit looks like it cost like $100 off Amazon, her haircut makes Anton Chigurh like a cutting-edge trailblazer, her performance is a bit over the top and theatre kid at times, and her American accent comes and goes depending on whether or not she's in a reshoot, but I do get the impression she's at least trying to do her best with the material, and she can absolutely belt out the musical numbers, which is pretty much what you'd expect from a trained vocalist. The same cannot be said for Gal Gadot, however. It genuinely pains me to say this, but I think we all need to come to the acceptance that that girl cannot fucking act. It takes a special kind of charisma, presence, and dramatic range to play a good Disney villain, and well, Gal Gadot doesn't have it. Her delivery somehow manages to be wooden and scenery chewing at the same time, and when she has to deliver a big musical number, you can pinpoint the exact moment where they swap out her voice with someone who can actually sing.
Imagine there's no heaven.
Okay. So, hey, the pro-Palestine actress, I guess, wins. She
Palestine
wins
for the win.
the Snow White movie.
The Zionist takes the L. Zegler shines. And what I guess was an underwhelming film, but yeah, no, I knew she'd nail it, and she did. And the Zionist takes the L.
Apparently she did.
And they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not with this one. Variety's article was probably one of the most cutting, vicious reviews I've ever read. The whole article, the whole review was written with the premise, hey, this is a great made-for-TV movie for the kids. Who cares if the sets look kind of cheap and the CGI is terrible? Oh, hang on. This is a $250 million movie in movie theaters? Oh, dear. Oh, dear. So, yeah, apparently nobody is giving this a good review. Apparently it's pretty horrible. I think this movie is kind of symbolically the end of an era. Like, it's the end of the entire period that you could just walk in and pitch a deconstruction of something, and that was enough to get it greenlit. Yeah, we're going to deconstruct Snow White. Okay, well, is it good? It's not that you can't do that, but you need to do it well. And there were many years there where you didn't have to do it well. You just had to pitch that idea and you could get it made. They've lost too much money at this point on that approach. This is the now you're having the last things from that era kind of spilling out of the pipeline. And as I've been saying, a lot of these nerd channels are going to go the way of the dinosaur. Only the best of them, like Drinker, are going to survive, I think.
All right, folks. Well, dudissidents.com/Rumble. We are heading over there right now. We got 1,500 strong in the Rumble chat. Everybody go there. Follow that link. That takes you directly to our Rumble page. Anthony Ringett, thanks for the $5. Zegler is a fave babe. Thank you. Janice Anderson, people treated Trump's first presidential run in 2004 as the joke his 16 and 24 runs should have been treated as. Thank you, Janice. All right, that's it for Super Chats. We will take Rumble Rants on the Rumble side, but we are going to bring in our guest, Caleb Maupin. So please, folks, head over there, and we will be with Caleb on Rumble exclusively in 5 minutes.
And don't miss this exceptionally raunchy intermission.
There you are. All right, everybody. DoDissidents.com/Rumble. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Make sure you head over. Bye-bye.
Please clap.